you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be a brand new build. There's been some hype about this, and rightly so as well. The Necromancer is now live for Elsweyr. Now, this is a Stamina Necro. It's focused upon mostly single target damage, although it does have really good AoE as well. But above all, of course, you have to make sure you can survive and sustain, and we've got that all built in with our build and our skills combined. So we're going to go into the stats first of all. Quickly pop the potion. We are on 18.3k max health, 33.8k max stamina. We are on 1.4k recovery almost, and we have 4k weapon damage with 60% crit chance. We're on 11k resist across the board. Now, with a warden in your group, obviously you can have higher resistances, or if you slot resist buff as well. But for now, we're sitting on 11. Now, we are on 64 points max stamina. So we put it all into stamina. We're using the Shadow Munderstone with 16% crit damage, of course, and we're a stage 4 vampire. Now we are using our TM takeaway broth food, but you can change that if you want. Now, if you don't have access to this food, you don't want to pay all that extra money for it, you don't want to make it, you can of course use Dubious Command and Throne, which also has max stamina, max health, and stam recovery. Slightly less than this, but it will perform very, very well. Failing that, if you don't want to use either one of these two, and you don't mind heavy attacking every so often, you can go flat stat food, which will give you massive increase to max health and stamina. So your potential output is higher if you can sustain it, but if not, you will have to heavy attack a little bit more, and it will probably push you closer to around the same as this. But you will survive a lot more, obviously, because you've got more max health. Although our health is really, really high anyway. We are sitting on a nice, comfy 18k, but if you want more, then of course max stat food is yours. But like I said, you will have to heavy attack more often. Now I'm going to go through the skills. Now, there was a video on my channel explaining every single skill, but obviously some of those have changed since the PTS phases, and we now know a lot more about the Necro. It's been used for quite a bit so far on the PTS, and now it's live. We can actually put some of this into practice because it's now real. So I'm going to explain every single one of these, why they're there, what we use them for, how they work in tandem with other skills, and all that good stuff as well. So stick with it and I will explain it all. If you think you already know it all, fair enough, carry on. You can skip this bit if you want, but if you do ask questions that I've already answered in the comment section below, I won't respond to them. So it's up to you whether you listen or not. So first of all, Blighted Blast Bones. This is in the Gravelord skill line. This is actually the second ability you unlock. Starts off as Blast Bones, morph it to Blighted Blast Bones. So we've got the stamina morph of it. Be careful near guards, because if you activate this, obviously it's an aggressive act and you will get penalized for it. The guards will try and fine you or kill you. Now what this does is this launches a skeleton. You raise a skeleton, it runs straight at the target that you've chosen, like so. And when it gets there, it will explode. Boom. Brilliant. Now, what that does also, you can see there's a corpse on the ground now. This will actually place a corpse on the ground. So, it will hit the target, it will explode in area of effect, and it will apply Major Defile for 4 seconds, reducing healing received and health recovery. So this is really nice in PvP for that aspect of it, but in PvE also it's very, very strong, and it hits really, really hard. It's also very, very cheap. Now, the radius of the area of effect is 6 meters, and the duration is 8 seconds. So if it does chase the target for 8 whole seconds and it doesn't actually catch up with it because it's running away too fast, then it won't explode and you'll have to fire another one. But something else to note as well, while it's active, you cannot cast another one. So my skills will actually be grayed out. So I'll cast another, I can't use it. When it blows up, I can use another one. That's important. I know, it casts after 2.5 seconds, then it chases the target. So it takes a little while to activate. So you want to apply this, use other skills afterwards while it's ready, and then when it blows up, you apply it again, if you can fit that in. But in our rotation, I'll explain exactly how to utilize this in the way that we're going to be using it. Next up is Rearm and Trap. Of course, this is from the Fighters Guild skill line. You do want this. This is Trap Beast to start with. Morph it to Rearming Trap. Basically, you place it on the ground. After a second and a half, it will pop and do physical damage for 6 seconds. Then it will rearm and do it for another 6 seconds. But while it's active, even if it's under a boss, the boss doesn't need to be immobilized, the damage will still apply. We gain minor force, increasing our critical damage by 10%. So all critical damage that we do is increased while this is active. Keep this up 100% of the time. Next up is Detonating Siphon. This takes a little while to unlock, but this is actually really, really strong. Now, this puts a corpse on the ground when it dies. And Detonating Siphon can synergize off of that. This is the 5th ability to unlock in the Gravelord skill line. Starts off as Shocking Siphon, so you will have the Mag Morph to start with. Then morph it to the Stamina version, and this will do damage over time, disease damage in fact, over 12 seconds to all enemies around the corpse and between you and the corpse. So it does area of effect within 5-meter radius of the actual activation itself, and it does damage to anyone caught in a beam between you and that corpse for the duration. Now, if it lasts a full duration, it will explode at the end, doing area of effect damage as well, and while slotted, your damage done is increased by 3%. So this is incredibly powerful. One, you want to keep it on there for the passives, and you also want to keep it active all the time for the damage over time. Now, what this does, will activate the bone skeleton dude. Boom. Now we can consume that corpse. You can only do it when there's a corpse. When you do, as you can see, it takes damage over time, and I've got a beam attached to me. Now, we're going to show you how this actually works in combat. Not just on the target, but to anyone caught in it. Need another skeleton. We'll use you. The range is really long, 28 meters, so we'll do it from here. We'll put a blast bones on him. Watch. The beam, anyone caught in that beam. See, no damage, takes damage. The beam is massive. So, you do need to be careful which way you're aiming, obviously, because you want to make sure you take advantage of a corpse that is beneficial to you, not just one over there somewhere, but anything caught in it. So you can position yourself very, very tactically to take advantage of it. But you do want it to run out, because if it runs out, it will cast an explosion. So make sure you don't overcast this, make it last its full duration, boom, when it's gone off, reapply another one. Very, very powerful. Now, next up is Venom Skull. This is also in the Gravelord skill line. First ability to unlock starts off as Flame Skull, morph it to Venom Skull. This is a single target hit. It does poison damage, and every third cast of this ability deals a 20% increased damage. But, while slotted, casting any Necromancer ability while you are in combat will count towards the third cast. So, this can stack up on its own. So we fire it once, you can see a skull in my buff timers, then another one, and the third one will be more damage. But if you use blast bones, for example, that counts as 1. If you use detonating siphon, that counts as 2, and then your third one is a double-handed skull throw. It's really, really handy to not spam it, but get that third cast every rotation to be able to hit really, really hard with it. And it's got massive range as well. So if you are out in the open, you can still hit from range. Now, next up is Rending Slashes. This starts off in our dual wield skill line as Twin Slashes. It's a second ability you unlock. Morph it to Rending Slashes if you want the initial hit to do more damage. If you don't, and you're not too fussed about that, then you can take Blood Craze instead, which will heal you once every 2 seconds. But the damage over time, the bleed effect, is exactly the same. Bleed effects ignore physical resistances, so it will do its maximum damage as long as you've got buffs and such all the time. And both morphs are the same. The only difference, however, is the initial hit. On Rending Slashes, the initial hit is higher. On Blood Craze, it's slightly lower, but you do heal. So the choice is yours. But you want this on here as well. You want to keep this up 100% of the time. Your damage over time is massive as a Necromancer, but we'll get to that when we get to the passives. Also, another thing you can swap this for is Steel Tornado was altered, so you don't want to use that anymore. Use this. This is for area of effect. It does nice flat area of effect damage, but Whirling Blades is now the new execute for that. And basically, the lower the target's health, the more damage you do. So you can spin to win and kind of get some execute passive damage in there if you want. Or, what you can do, this is what I would preference, if you don't want to use Rending Slashes or Blood Craze, what you can do is you can put Ruinous Scythe, which is from the Tyrant, the Bone Tyrant skill line. First ability to unlock, starts off as Death Scythe. Now what you do is you actually do physical damage to enemies in front of you. Every third cast, unless they're on cooldown, will cause off balance, which is mental, because if you heavy attack during off balance phase, you get 70% more damage from your attack, and you get an increased double resources back, so it's very important. But above all, this actual hit heals you for the first enemy hit, and an additional almost 1k for each other enemy, up to 5 enemies that you hit. Healing is scaled off of your max health, however, so the higher your health, the higher the heal. So, if you're using flat stat food and you're using 5-1-1, so 1 light, 1 heavy, and 5 medium, your heal is larger. So, the reason for the extra health there is really, really beneficial for that particular heal. But above all, basically what this does is this is an area of effect ability. So, if there's loads and loads of targets, we'll just grab this Skelly over here. A couple of them. We got another one? Nope. That'll do. The first one in front of you will give you the biggest heal, and the rest will contribute towards it. But you can hit multiple targets at once. So in AoE situations, if you've got your dots down and you're happily hitting stuff, instead of spamming the skull, you can actually spam this a little bit. It's really, really nice. It'll keep you alive, and it'll do damage in area of effect. So you've got two choices there. You can either use the Scythe, or you can use Rend and Slashes. Bear in mind, however, there are some passives that will actually benefit you if you have the Scythe on your bar. But on a single target fight, obviously you want to go with the dual wield ability. Mass adds, take the Scythe. It's brilliant. Now, next up is our ultimate, of course. Flawless Dawnbreaker on the front bar. You do not need to use this. You need to use your back bar ultimate because of how powerful it is. But this does do physical damage over time. It hits Undead, Daedra, or Werewolf for more damage in the passives as well. This is a really nice physical short burst ultimate that you can use to just finish something off if you really have to. But I wouldn't recommend using this ability as your main spammable unless you're in situations where there's loads and loads and loads of Undead. Because you can build ulti very, very fast, especially as a Necromancer, and you may be able to spam a little bit. But when we get to the other ultimate, you're going to see why we preference that one overall. And this one is just here for stats. It gives you a 5% increase to weapon damage. Keep this on your front bar for that. Basically, this comes from the Fighters Guild skill line. It needs level 10 to unlock it. Starts off as Dawnbreaker, morph it to Flawless Dawnbreaker. Just for stats. Now, this is where it gets nuts. Now, we have an ability here from the Bone Tyrant skill line. It's the third one you unlock, called Bitter Harvest. Morph it to Necrotic Potency. This is disgusting. This basically consumes a corpse, and for doing so, you'll get 6 ultimate, and you'll heal for 703 health every 1 second for 2 seconds per additional corpse. This ability scales off your max health as well. So obviously the higher your health, the larger the heal. So it's not based off stamina, it's not based off magicka. Anyone can actually use this, but the more health, the better. So if you're in a trial, you've got Ebon, you've got minor toughness and stuff like that, your health is going up and up and up, this actually gets more potent. While slotted, you take less damage, so your damage incoming is reduced by 3%, but 6 ultimate per corpse is disgusting. Now, this isn't just dead enemies. Watch this. There's my blast bones. Consume it. I heal, and I get ultimate from it. For each additional corpse, you add 2 seconds to your healing over time, and you add another 6 ultimate. So if you consume 6 bodies, you get 36 ultimate instantly and a long heal over time. It's very, very powerful, and we actually use this in our rotation in synergy with our other abilities, which I will explain more in the rotation. But we can basically get 12 ultimate from this every single rotation, the way that this particular rotation is set up. And inside mechanics, when you've got mass adds, you can build ulti very, very fast. You really want to be taking advantage of this particular skill. Yes, you can go full glass cannon and just double bar blast bones and have a completely different rotation and do a shit ton of single target. But you won't have any heals, you won't have any ulti gain, and it may make things a little more difficult when you've got lots and lots of targets to deal with. But the choice is yours. I would highly recommend putting this here. Poison Injection is next. This comes from the Bow skill line. This takes a while to get to. You need level 38 in here to unlock Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. Now, this does damage over time. Keep it on the target all the time. Don't let it run out, and if it does, reapply it quickly. Now, the trick to this is, it is an execute as such. The lower the target's health, under 50%, the more damage this does, up to a maximum of 260% more. But you don't just want this on the target when the health is low. You want it on the target all the time. It's a very hefty damage over time throughout your rotation, and then it gets stronger and stronger and stronger the lower the health of the target is. So keep this up all the time. Now, next up is Razor Caltrops. This comes from the Assault skill line. You will need to go into PvP for this. Go into Battlegrounds. Even if you lose, you still get Alliance points. It's the safest way to get Alliance points. Even if you're having a bad day, you'll still unlock stuff. So get this. Starts off as Caltrops, morph it to Razor Caltrops. Just note, by the way, Resolving Vigor is just before Caltrops. You can slot this instead of Necrotic Potency if you prefer, but you won't get the ulti regen, so I highly wouldn't recommend it. This does take a little bit of skill to get used to. You've got to be aware of the corpses around you. So if you're not that good at paying attention, obviously Vigor will probably help you. But if you are, Necrotic Potency is amazing. But anyway, back to Caltrops. This is very, very simple. Big AoE, initial hit, and then damage over time every second. Very, very strong. Keep this up all the time. Don't spam it. It's expensive. Next up is, of course, our minion, Skeletal Archer. This is in the Gravelord skill line. Fourth ability to unlock. Starts off as Skeletal Mage. Unfortunately, it starts with a Magical Morph, but once you've morphed it, you have a Stamina Morph. Do not use this near the guards or in towns because they will attack you. They don't like it. Necromancy is illegal, and if they see you doing any of that shit, they will try and kill you. But this is a fire and forget pet. Much like Blast Bones, it has a duration. Boom, it's gone. This has a duration. Now, it lasts 16 seconds. You summon a Skeletal Archer to help you, and he does damage every 2 seconds. But each time the damage is dealt by this archer, the next attack will do 10% more damage than its previous. So the longer this is up, the more damage it does. So keep this up the whole time if possible, and then reapply it just as it runs out or just before it runs out. Also, this creates a corpse, which, yes, you are catching on, is very handy. So he will do damage to whatever target I'm fighting. Whichever one I heavy attack, in fact. Same as other pets. But he doesn't need to be double barred like a sword pet because he's just fire and forget. Before he runs out, or even when he runs out, he will put a corpse on the ground. Yes, I can consume it. 6 ulti and a heal. Now here's the trick. When you're firing it, you want it to be up for about 16 seconds, obviously, to get the most out of it. But inside your rotation, you may have to reactivate him before he's finished. So don't spam it, but if you do reactivate it after a long period of time, he also places a corpse. Now, if this wasn't already obvious, Blast Bones is one corpse, and the pet is another. I now have 2 bodies. 12 ultimate, thank you very much. Really, really, really helpful to understand how to work with corpses to utilize your own sustain and damage output and survivability. Is very, very helpful indeed. Now, if you've got a room full of ads, this counts towards it as well. So it's very, very good. This is a really high damage. You must keep this up all the time, but just remember you can synergize your abilities next to each other or with each other. So this one makes a corpse and you can use Detonate and Siphon. These fire abilities stack up a 3rd hit for this. Corpses can be consumed by this. You see how these are all linking in together? If you can get to grips with those, you can become very, very powerful as a necromancer. If you can't, don't worry. You can spam stuff, look awesome, and still do good damage. But if you can utilize this and pay attention to the surroundings around you, I guess, these can be very, very strong. Now, next up is Endless Hail, finally. This is in our bow skill line. The 2nd ability to unlock starts off as Volley, morph it to Endless Hail. This does damage in area of effect, just like Caltrops, except in a smaller area of effect, so keep it in the middle. Keep them both up on top of each other, but this will do damage every half a second. It's a rapid firing dot. It's very, very powerful indeed. And not to mention, of course, we do have a damage over time effect here, which is also very, very fast paced. So we've got 2 really fast dots. Now, next up, of course, is our major ultimate. Now, this will get you in trouble as well. Don't do it in front of guards. But this is very, very strong. Malcolm, as we called him on the live stream, will spawn a massive Colossus, and he will hit 3 times. Each one progressively stronger than the other. In area of effect, it will do massive damage. It looks like 10, 11, and 12k there, but that can go in excess of around sort of 90 to 100k mark, depending on your buffs. But each hit applies major vulnerability to the enemy for 3 seconds, increasing all of the damage that that target or those targets take by 30%. This is a new buff in the game. The Necromancer is the only class with it. Now, there's 3 hits here, so each hit can reapply the major vulnerability. So overall, you end up having about a 5-second uptime on it. It's very, very fast ultimate. It's very, very strong, and it is really, really helpful to you and your group. This is a 30% damage increase to everybody. It's insane. And what you need to do is you place it where you want it to hit. There's Malcolm. They all get hit with major vulnerability. Everybody's damage goes up. It's expensive, 225 on this bar, but at the same time, don't forget, you can suck up so much ultimate, you can use this very often. It's really powerful, so you really want to be using this all the time, but we did mention Dawnbreaker can be spammed. That's because of this ability here. Don't want to go too far ahead. There's lots and lots of ads. You can suck up loads of ultimate, spam Dawnbreaker to kill skeletons and Daedra and such really, really quickly, or you can use this. I personally wouldn't spam Dawnbreaker as much. I would use this all the time, but it depends on your group. This is crazy strong. This is from the Gravelord skill line, by the way. Frozen Colossus, you need level 12 here. Morph it to Pestilent Colossus so that you can take advantage of this version of it. The other version's all ice damage. You want that if you're a Magicka build. This one is for the physical. Okay, now I'm going to go into passives, and this is very, very important. First of all, Gravelord. We're using loads of these. Absolute loads of them. So, in fact, all of them but one. So, you're going to want these anyway. When your Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender dies, the cost of your next Blast Bones, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender is reduced by 25%. So, if we cast a Blast Bones, and it explodes, we get a buff here. And it's constant. It doesn't have a timer. Reusable parts. Then, your next one is cheaper. Simple as that. The pet dies, same applies. Next one's cheaper. Very, very simple. So you are going to need this passive. Your skills that summon minions cost less if the minion dies or is consumed or whatever. That's ridiculous. Helps like hell towards your sustain. Increases your critical strike chance against enemies under 25% health by 10% for each Gravelord ability slotted. We actually have 3 at the moment. You can, of course, put more here if you want, but each one will give you a further 10% increase to your crit chance during execute. So our crit chance is currently around the 60% mark. This will go up and up and up and up. So although we don't have an actual execute, our passives make us crit like hell when things are nearly dead. It's absolutely insane. Get this as soon as possible. While a Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical penetration is increased by 1.5k. Ouch. So if this ability is active, this one, or this, well, this isn't active, this is fire and forget. If this is active, or this is active, or even this, if any of those abilities are active, which they will be all the time, we have higher penetration. This is really, really helpful. Increase your damage done with damage over time effects by 10%. This is damage over time, so is this, so is this, so is this, so is the pet, so is this, so is this. Everything we do pretty much, apart from the odd initial hits from the skull or the blast bones, is actually damage over time. So this really, really benefits us. It's really, really handy. Bone Tyrant, of course. This is very important. Whenever an enemy you are in combat with dies within 28 meters of you, you restore 200 magicka and stamina. Now remember I said that you can put the scythe on this bar for AoE situations and for heals if you need to. This is when you can benefit from this awesome recovery passive. This is very, very helpful. So if you do have that scythe slotted, you will need this. Reduce the damage you take from damage over time abilities by 10% while you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. Increases your healing received by 2% for each Bone Tyrant ability slotted. We don't have one slotted on this bar at the moment, but you can, so that will give you the bonus. And we do have one on the back bar, so we do get the bonus there. Increases your max health by 1250. Congratulations. Just for being a necromancer, you have a health buff. That is disgusting. Really happy with that one. This is also nuts. While you have a negative effect on you, your healing done is increased by 8%. So any heals that you do are increased. So if you're using the scythe, if you're using the other morph of this, the blood craze, or you're using this, any heals that you do will be increased. While you have a living death ability slotted, which we actually do not, your critical strike chance with all healing abilities increased by 20% in proportion to the severity of the target's wounds. Now we don't have any of these active, but you can slot this if you really want to occasionally, because you can actually remove negative effects, which is really mental. And while doing so, if you heal from anything, for example, if you heal from this, it will be stronger. Or if you heal from a scythe or anything like that, anything that you use for healing will be increased. So it's very, very nice indeed. But again, that's very situational. You may not need this if you're not slotting any abilities from this skill line. This is nuts, by the way. You can consume a corpse and actually gain stamina back over 12 seconds and increase your healing done while it's slotted. Not something that we're using in rotation, but just bear in mind that this is an option if you want to. When you use an ability on a corpse, you generate 10 ultimate, and this can happen once every 16 seconds. You saw me consuming life from the bodies on the ground in order to give myself ultimate. That does still apply to this passive. So, for example, let's get a pet out. We'll make him hit the ground. You can see my ultimate going up. When I consume his corpse, it should give me 6 ultimate, but it won't. Went up to 43. You still get that 10 ultimate bonus once every 16 seconds, no matter what the corpse is. It doesn't have to be an enemy. Any corpse will give you 10 ultimate once every 16 seconds alongside your passive regen. It's very, very strong. While you have a Blastbone, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender active, your Magicka and Stamina recovery is increased by 200. Activate the pet. Recovery is 1514. It goes up. You have increased recovery for having a pet. Nuts. Passives are absolutely insane. You must get them. Now, dual wield, of course, we are using these as our main weapon. You want to get every single one of these. This will increase the damage you deal with dual wield abilities against enemies under 25%. So if you are using Word and Blades, for example, or Rend and Slashes, those get stronger at low health. So does your light and heavy attacks. This increases weapon damage of your offhand weapon, which is weaker than your main hand. So this does push the gap a little bit. Reduces the cost of dual wield abilities. We are using one. We want to get the cost down. Gives you a 15% damage bonus against certain CC effects enemies, so this will actually help boost your damage as well. And this grants you a bonus based on the type of weapon you're using. We are using 1 sword and 1 dagger. So we have a crit chance bonus and we have a 3% overall damage boost. This is very, very nice indeed. You can mix and match whatever you want, but overall with this particular build, the sword and dagger combined did actually outperform. We are using a bow, of course, and a back bow. You want all of these. This will give you a damage increase of up to 12% for enemies at range. So if you are at range for any reason and you are using bow abilities at the time, this will give you increased damage while you are. This will give us a crit rating on our back bar. On our bow, we don't have the dagger bonus because we swap bars. We don't have it anymore, but this is equivalent to that. So we do have the same bonus on both bars. This will reduce the stamina cost of bow abilities by 15%, which we do want to get the cost down. Our abilities are expensive, so get this as soon as. Hawkeye, every single light or heavy attack you do with a bow will give you a 5% increase to your bow abilities, and they stack up to 5 times. Maximum of 25%, of course, but we're going to be on the back bar not for very long, so we will only probably get 2 to 3 ticks of this, but we will still benefit from them nonetheless. So as you can see here, there's a pink circle on the buff time is there, and every time I do a light attack, it restarts a timer and adds an additional tick. We'll probably end up getting 2 or 3 of those per rotation, but it will count nonetheless. If you're a bow build, however, you'll have 100% uptime on that all the time, and if you don't, you're doing something wrong. This one, hasty retreat, is important. If you dodge roll on your bow bar, you have 4 seconds worth of major expedition, making you faster, so you can dodge and get out or in trouble quicker. We are using 1 piece of light armor, by the way, so we need these passives here, but we don't need these bottom 2 because these require 5 pieces. But these here will give you reduction to effective snares, so you don't actually get slowed too much, and also reduction to cost of sprinting. This will give you a mag recovery bonus and reduction to cost for mag abilities. We aren't actually using any, but if you ever do need to, then of course you can use this passive. This one, of course, as well, increases your spell resistance by a small amount for each piece worn as well. We're wearing 1 piece, so get all 3 of these. Medium armor, we're wearing 5 pieces. This will increase your crit rating per piece worn. This will increase your stam recovery, which is very important, and reduce the cost of abilities. This is for sneaking, so only important in PvP, maybe if you're stealing stuff, or maybe March of Sacrifices. So this one isn't essential, but you will want to get it eventually. This one here is very important. For wearing 5 pieces, you will actually increase your weapon damage by 15%, which is massive. And this one improves your movement speed while sprinting and reduces the cost of dodge roll, which is very, very handy because we will be dodge rolling. We want to get the cost down. Heavy armor, of course, we're using 1 piece. We don't need these 2 because they require 5 pieces, but these 3 here we do. This will give us physical and spell resistance. This will give us health recovery, which isn't that important because we're a vampire, but it will give us 108 magic and stand back once every 4 seconds for taking damage for the 1 piece worn, and this will give you a 2% increase to health. Remember, our healing abilities, this one and the scythe combined, do benefit off of higher max health, so we do want to make sure that we've got as much health bonuses as we can possibly get based on our setup. Now, we are a stage 4 vampire. You can be stage 3 if you want, but just to keep things simple, I always stay stage 4. I'm not struggled in any content with a stage 4 vampire. Just don't be too squishy and don't stay in fire. Now, this will increase your mag and stam recovery by 10%, so that's pretty huge. And also, we have an undeath passive, which will reduce the damage you take while under 50% health of up to 33%. So, the lower your health, the less damage you take. This is absolutely mental. Also, Fighters Guild passives. Now, this is very, very important. Intimidating Presence, obviously you want to get the cost of Beast Trap down, so 15% reduction there. This increases your weapon damage for each ability from this skill line slotted. As you can see on the back bar, we've got nothing. On the front bar, we've got 6%. That is because this is a 3% bonus. And although this here is a 5% bonus to us in our skill, this counts, and this will give us an additional 3 as well. So these 2 both give us 6%, plus Dawnbreaker gives us a 5% flat anyway. Banish the Wicked. This is where I said you might be able to spam your Dawnbreaker sometimes. Or even Malcolm, you can just fight him more often. If you kill Undead, Daedra, or Werewolf, you get 9 ultimate. If you consume a corpse, you get 6 ultimate. Once every 16 seconds, if you consume a corpse, you get 10 ultimate. And if you do a light attack or a heavy attack over the period of 8 seconds, or once you first activated either one of the 2, you will get 3 ulti a second. Your ulti regen is broken as hell. This is very, very powerful. Make sure you get it. And this, if you hit Undead, Daedra, or Werewolves with any of these abilities, where Beast Trap or Dawnbreaker, if you really have to, then you will increase the damage you do to those by 20%. So it's a bit mental. You can, I've said it a couple times already, actively spam this occasionally in certain content. But for the most part, you want to get this Colossus up as soon as possible because it's mental. Now, next up is Undaunted. This is very, very important. If you take any synergy, you will get back 4% stamina, health, and magic. Take the synergies. Simple as that. This one here increases your max health, max stamina, and max magic by 2%. for each type of armor worn. We are wearing 1 piece of light, 1 piece of heavy, and 5 pieces of medium. We're wearing 3 different types. We get 6% across the board. It's very, very powerful. Get this passive as soon as possible. We don't need to worry about those. We are an orc. Now, you can be any race you want, but the orc did outperform on this particular setup. However, I did mess with a wood elf for quite a considerable amount of time, and although the weapon damage is lower, the recovery is higher, so you don't have to heavy attack quite so often, so the choice is yours, really. But the reason for the orc is, of course, 2k max stamina, which is insane, 1k max health, which does contribute, obviously, to our overall, so the more health, the bigger our heals and such, and obviously, our longer we can survive. But when you deal damage with a weapon ability, you heal for 600 once every 4 seconds. This here, Endless Hail, is a weapon ability. If that's on the target and we're running away, even though that's running, once every 4 seconds, we'll heal from it. It's mental. And, of course, increases your weapon damage by 258 and reduces the cost of sprinting and increases your movement speed. So we're fast, we don't use as much stamina when we're running, we have higher weapon damage, we have high max health, we heal from our damage, and we also have high stamina. It's very, very strong across the board. But just note, we don't have any recovery bonuses, so you may need to heavy attack inside mechanics occasionally to keep your sustain up. During off-balance periods is your best time to heavy attack if you can keep an eye on it, because that will give you double resources back. Just bear that in mind. Finally, the most important passive in the game, you hear this every video, medicinal use will make your potions last 30% stronger. We are using weapon pots, which means we have an increased major brutality, 20% increase to weapon damage. We have major savagery, increasing our crit chance by 10%. We get stamina back, and we have major endurance, increasing our recovery. Keep this up 100% of the time. With a medicinal use passive, this lasts 47.6 seconds with a 45-second cooldown. If you don't have medicinal use 3, the minimum for this is around 36 seconds. You'll have big gaps in your sustain and your damage output in your rotation, so you want to make sure you get that passive. Now, we're going to get to gear. Some of you might be happy with this, some of you maybe not. But we are using Briarheart. Now, the sword and dagger did outperform versus the 2 daggers, but it was very, very close. The daggers are quite easy to get because there's the quest for them, and they're not unique items, so you can actually do the quest on 2 different characters and you've got your weapons covered and you don't have to spend loads of money on the market. But the choice is yours. Anyway, whichever weapons you decide to use, Briarheart needs to be on your front bar, on your weapons and jewelry, or your weapon and 3 pieces of body armor. Now, Nernhoned on the main hand and Precise on the offhand. You do not need Sharpened. The reason we don't need Sharpened is because we have 1,500 penetration in our own passives, so we don't need the 1.3k from the weapon. So, this gives you crit, stamina, crit again, and when you deal critical damage, which you will, you have a 10% chance to increase your weapon damage by 449 for 10 seconds, and this can happen once every 15, so it's a 5-second gap. When you crit during this time, however, you will heal for 609 health. So just for hitting stuff, you will actually heal. Now, what you're looking for, or you can listen for it actually, you can hear some high-pitched tinging in the background. There it is. Look at my hands. They're glowing, they've got thorns around them, and you can constantly hear that tick, 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 tick. That's me healing off damage. All I have to do is crit. And the lower the health of the target, remember, as Captain Jack, remember the lower the health of the target, the more crit chance I have. So I'm going to crit a lot, and I'm going to heal like hell from hitting and hitting and hitting and keep going. Do not take damage off the target. As long as damage is always on the target, you will keep this up for really good uptime, and you'll get your weapon damage up, and you'll get your heals. You heal for doing damage. This is why we don't have Vigor. As long as you're hitting stuff, you can play aggressive like a sorcerer. This is like a lower version of Power Surge or Crit Surge, alongside your Necrotic Potency, which is absolutely mental. This is very, very strong indeed. We are using poisons, of course. This is also boosted by your sword, because it increases your flat damage output, by the way, by 3%. It's really, really nice. Double dots, I will put the recipe on the website, but these proc from your light attacks, your heavy attacks, or your weapon abilities from the bar that holds the poisons. So your rend and slashes, or your light attacks or your heavy attacks will all contribute towards firing this off. It's very, very strong. If you want to use weapon enchants instead, you can just use an absorb stamina one and then a poison one perhaps, but the poisons themselves are very cheap to make and they're really, really powerful, so I would recommend using these. We are using Maelstrom Bow, but if you don't have a Maelstrom Bow, of course, you can just put an agility one on the back for the increased max stamina and you'll be just fine. But you do want to make sure it's in an increased weapon damage and spell damage glyph with an infused trait. This will dramatically increase the strength of Endless Hail, but above all, the reason it's infused is because if you have damage over time on your weapon skills and they're single target, they will fire the glyph to start with, and then they won't fire it anymore unless you reapply it. But area of effect, whether it's attached to you or the ground, can consistently fire off the glyph even if you're on the other bar, because that's the bar it fired from. As you can see, my weapon damage glyph, the one with the sword in it, as long as I keep this up, it will constantly reapply itself. You can see it's almost gone, now it's back again. If you just did that with poison injection, it wouldn't work. So keep Endless Hail up all the time and you will constantly have 100% uptime on your Berserker enchant. Now, monster sets, you have a couple of choices here. Velodreth is very, very nice. Increase the flat weapon damage, and it fires those disease spores. Just note, by the way, each spore can only hit one target. You can't hit the same target with 2 of them. Has a 9-second cooldown, but it hits really, really hard. But if you are struggling with sustain, you may want to go Storm Fist. Just make sure that the trait's the same, of course, because you get a Stam recovery bonus for this instead, and then you still get a nice physical proc once every 8 seconds. It's really, really powerful. Storm Fist also can do lightning damage. So it does 3 ticks of lightning damage, then a physical hit. And that lightning damage can proc minor vulnerability. So you may see some skewed numbers sometimes on a non-buff dummy. That's why. But above all, it's your choice. You've got the flat one if you don't mind heavy attacking, but if you want more recovery, you can go for Storm Fist if you want. Infused on the head, Divines on the shoulder, 1 light, 1 heavy in any order. Now, the base set, by the way, is of course Reliquin, because it's extremely powerful. It has a crit bonus, it has Minor Slayer, it has another crit bonus, it has max stamina if you have Perfected. If you don't have Perfected, don't worry, you can get the regular version from normal trials. They are run all day long, just keep your eyes peeled for them and just join pugs. Get what you need and get out. But if you don't have the Perfected version, that's fine. You will just lose 1k max stam. However, how you apply this is to do a light attack. And then you can see a whirlwind on him. Do it again. There's 2 stacks. Do it again. There's 3 stacks. Same applies for a heavy attack. There's 4 stacks. If you don't do a light attack or a heavy attack within 5 seconds of the last one, all your damage is gone. That entire proc will stack up to 20 times. It does a stupid amount of high damage if you stack it. But as soon as it runs out, because you failed to light or heavy, you just lost loads and loads of damage. So if you can't effectively use that inside mechanics, especially when you've got to go out of the way, make sure you fire bow light attacks to keep it up, by the way, and then come back in. If you can't use it, you've got 2 choices. Practice or take it off and use something else. Because the amount of damage that you'll lose from not keeping that proc up is insane. Also, you can, of course, use Alkosh, which is very, very nice. Has a crit bonus, it has Minor Slayer, and has a weapon damage bonus, so more flat. But when you activate a synergy, you debuff the target for 3010 for 10 seconds for physical and spell resistance. Every single synergy that you apply will reapply that debuff. It won't stack, it will reapply it. But the proc itself, the initial physical hit, and the damage over time, which yes is boosted by your passives, that does stack. So every single synergy you take will give you an additional one of these. It's hard to note in your combat metrics because it just shows 1 proc of it. But if you look at the target, you can see the dot ticking over and over and over. It's the same number every time, depending on your buffs. And you'll note that it will actually proc every second. But if you have multiples, you can see loads of them all ticking over one after the other after the other. Pay very close attention. You'll see that they stack up. Really, really powerful. But you have to aim this. And this is something that you can use in combat if you have an abundance of synergy. So if your group has 3 to 4 synergies plus all the time, you want to use this over Reliquin. If not, Reliquin will do more single target damage if you've got less synergies than that. But of course, you'll have a debuff uptime. So the choice is yours there. One or the other is absolutely fine. Failing that, if you can't use either one of these effectively and you're struggling, you're just too much to deal with all at once, stick on Deadly. It's really, really nuts. You will increase all of your physical, poison damage, and bleed damage, and disease damage. That is damage over time throughout. So your Siphon, your Volley, your Poison Injection, your Caltrops, your Rend and Slashes, all of those will contribute, and this is very, very strong indeed. So the choice is yours. You've got Deadly if you want to go very flat and you just want to keep it simple. Reliquin if you can keep up your light and heavy attacks, or Alkosh if you've got an abundance of synergies. The choice is yours. Now, of course, trait-wise, you want to make sure you've got Infused on the head, chest, and legs. And then you want Divines on everything else. Jewelry, you want 3 Bloodthirsty. Our execute phase of our particular class, low health targets, gives us a massive amount of crit damage. Because we have a huge crit chance. We've already got crit damage already. And then we've got Bloodthirsty as well. All of our crits are going to hit really, really, really hard. So you want to put weapon damage on all of these. Push for 3 Bloodthirsty is absolutely nuts. Now, I'm going to go into the champion points. Then I'm going to get onto the rotation and show you a dummy kill, which everybody loves. First of all, Red Tree, same as everything else to be fair. 72 points into Ironclad to reduce income and direct damage. 64 and 64 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, so we've got a 13% reduction to all damage as well, because these are the same. And then 51 in Thick Skin, reducing the amount of damage we take from damage over time. 19 points in a Quick Recovery to increase the amount of healing received we get. So any heals that come from us or from somebody else will be improved. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of Break Free. 75 points into Tenacity and Mooncalf to increase our Stam recovery and returns from heavy attacks. 76 points into Tumbling, so we have a 23% reduction to cost, plus we've got some extra points in here just because they're not doing anything, and that will give us a Treasure Hunter passive as well, so we have higher quality loot. Okay, now we've got 3 points into Physical Weapons Expert, 40 into Master at Arms, 61 into Thermaturge, and 44 into Precise Strikes. We have 58 in Pierce and not 61 because we don't have a Sharpened Weapon, we don't need the Sharpened Weapon, we actually have 1.5k in our passives. This will actually put us to 2 points under 18,200. We'll actually be on 18,198 with all passives, bonuses, and debuffs applied. So if you want the extra 1 point in here, of course you can, but you have to take it out of here first. You really don't need it though. We're actually pretty close. We're 2 points under max. 64 points into Might as well, of course, increasing your physical, poison, and disease damage done by 13%. So across the board, these are very handy indeed. This is the most optimal as I've found for this particular setup so far. But if you want to change them, of course, it's up to you. But as far as pen cap is concerned, we are on it. We are covered. Now, oh, also ulti gen. If you go really low health, Vampire kicks in, we take less damage. Plus, you get 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 8 seconds. Be careful when your health is low, but when you do, you can build ulti very fast. So, now I'm going to go over the rotation. Now, this has the abilities that stack up on top of each other in mind. So, basically, what we want to do is we want to play off of each ability. So, you have to have your Beast Trap down all the time. That goes without saying. You want that to be active, because then you get your Minor Force bonus. Now, while it's active, you want to go to your back bar and start from scratch. Pretty much same as the rest of my build. So you have Endless Hail first of all, Light Attack, Poison Injection, Light Attack, get your pet out, Light Attack, Caltrops, swap. That's the standard rotation for that. But after then, we're going to be having corpses. So we want to change it a little bit. So what you'll be doing is you'll have Endless Hail, Light Attack, Poison Injection, Light Attack, Recast the Pet, Light Attack, Caltrops, Light Attack, Necrotic Potency, swap. I sucked up the ultimate of my recasted pet before swapping the bar. That will help with your ulti regen. And we're going to get even more than that because we're going to be utilizing the Blast Bones as well. Now, when it comes to your front bar rotation, this is a little tricky. Light Attack, Blast Bones. Light Attack, Rend and Slashes. Light Attack, Skull. Light Attack, Siphon to consume that. Light Blast Bones. Light Skull. Light Beast Trap, swap. Why did we do that? The reason we did that is because the first Blast Bones fires. I use a Skull and Rend in between because it's on grey cooldown. Take the corpse and get that dot. Reapply a new Blast Bones and a Skull and swap. We now have another corpse on the ground. Volley, light, poison, light, reapply pet, light, Caltrops, light, consume both bodies. This second Blast Bones and this pet that's now been reapplied both count as corpses. That's 12 ultimate every time I go to my back bar before I go to the front. That means Malcolm can be used a lot more often because I'm constantly building ultimates. If I don't have this skill in my rotation, every single rotation and every single second rotation I'll be missing 12, and then every second I'll be missing 22 ultimate. It's very fast to build ultimate if you understand the corpse system. Yes, of course, you can smack the crap out of the skeleton without that on your bar and get really high numbers. But in actual content, it helps a lot to be able to have a higher uptime on that ultimate so other people can have their damage boosted more often with the major vulnerability. So, hopefully that made sense, but if not, we're just going to go over it quickly one more time. We'll make sure your pet is always up first of all. He doesn't attack anything until you do. Make sure your Beast Trap is on. Volley, light, poison, light, Caltrops, swap. Light Blast Bones, light Rendon, light Skull. Light Siphon, light Blast Bones, light Skull, light Beast Trap, swap. Volley, light, poison, light, pet, light, Caltrops, light, consume the corpses, and then swap bars. In that order. It will take a little bit of getting used to, but as long as you've got everything in the right order, everything will line up perfectly. If you are struggling with sustain, just make sure that occasionally you heavy attack before you do your Rend and Slashes, or maybe heavy attack before you do a Skull, and you should be just fine. In fact, if you are struggling, you can, of course, like I said, use Storm Fist, or you can put one heavy attack in every single rotation, and you should be just fine. Anyway, Now I'm going to show you a quick dummy demonstration, which everybody loves, and we're going to be pretty much done from there. Here we go. So hopefully that helped. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. Hopefully you are, just as much as I am, enjoying the Necromancer. It is a mega class, very, very cool, but it's got a learning curve. So if you're very new to the game and you haven't quite picked up all the different skills, of course you can spam stuff and look awesome, but if you are advanced enough to understand how everything works, you can get some real potential out of this. It's really, really mental. So, first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support, and if you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website xynodegaming.com, where all the written guides are as well. and I live stream every night from 10 PM UK time unless I say otherwise on Twitter. Once again, thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.